Hi, my name is Andy Catto and I am Vice Chair of the City of London Guide Lecturers Association. We are hoping to run some training on lecturing skills, and those won't now be happening, unfortunately, until, well, much later in the year. So I thought it'd be worthwhile putting up a few short videos which would give some indication of the content I'm intended to cover on the training, and maybe give you some practical exercises to be practicing when we are all having to spend a lot more time than we'd planned perhaps at home. So the first session I'm going to be talking about today is around what's often called the paralinguistics, the decoration that we put around the words that we use. Because you might be well familiar with a famous piece of research that was done several years ago now by a man called Albert Mehrabian. And he did some research about when people are communicating, what factors affect the value of the communication, what factors get in the way and sometimes make for miscommunication. And his figures were that the words were only responsible maybe 7% of the time for miscommunication. Much more important were these paralinguistics, about 38%, and body language, about 55%. This research is often misquoted, and though I think the basic thrust of it, that the way we say things, the body language we use to back them up, are incredibly important between them. So this first session looks at how we say things. And in my experience, it's quite small changes in the way we communicate can have a big effect on the impact that we have on our audience. So I'd like you to sort of come with me and work through maybe a few practical exercises that can help us extend our range, if you will. First thing though, before we get into some of those detailed exercises, to think about our posture and breathing. Do you breathe? Everybody should have a hobby. It is a really important part of that starting point for making a great first impression, and the breathing to enable us to give us this raw material we use to communicate our words over to the audience. So posture, first of all. One important thing about posture, apart from it affects the impact that we have on people, is the effect it can have on tension within our body. Tension is incredibly contagious, and you might well, if you're doing a lecture, be feeling a little bit nervous, a bit apprehensive, and tension can communicate itself within the body. For example, just try clenching your fist. Really clench the fist, tense it. Can you feel that tension in your wrist, heading maybe up your arm, and of course potentially heading towards your vocal cords? We don't want that. So correct posture helps reduce that tension. So I like to think about maybe a sky hook. There's something pulling you up in space. So if you go up on your toes, you're standing there nice and strong and straight, and you just gently, this hook lowers you back down till your heels touch the floor, and your weight though is mainly on the balls of your feet, with your feet about hip distance apart. This is a good posture for making maximum impact and reducing stress in the body and tension. The danger can be if you are not standing correctly, if you sort of drop a hip or something like that, you can immediately feel the tension here, and it also reduces your impact. We'll say more in the next session when we talk about body language. So think about your posture first of all. And then breathing, this basic raw material. Sometimes when I work with people, they say, take a big breath, and they go, now, you get tension in the shoulders, not great. You also only pulling in a small amount of air into your top part of your lungs, called clavicular breathing. You haven't got a lot of resource there to work with. Far more effective is to breathe in sometimes the opposite way to which you're used to doing. So put your hands on your tummy, easy for me to do, and then let the air slowly drop in, and it inflates. As you breathe out, it deflates. In and out. And in and out. That's it. It's like inflating a balloon. Now what you can do to practice how much you've got there is when you've gone in and you're starting to breathe out again and your stomach is coming in, you just count as high as you can, as many numbers as you can. So in, and then 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13, 14, 15, 16, 17, coming towards the end there. You're starting to move into having to snap the cords to make a noise. Not great. So just keep practicing that. Keep your breathing. Great for tension release, but great for maximising the raw material, the air that we can use. Another thing, of course, good tension can do, good posture can do, is to reduce the impact of maybe a reaction that we sometimes get if you're feeling under threat, this fight or flight reaction, this primitive defense mechanism we can have, which may encourage us either to adopt a bit more of a belligerent stance or a more reduced stance, our sort of stress reaction, neither of which is effective. So thinking about your posture, shoulders back and down, feet well grounded, fantastic place to start. Your breathing you've mastered. And now a little bit about warming up. So tension can be there, so relaxing, possibly not when you're in front of your audience that's about to receive your lecture. And you can do things like just massaging that muscle that works with the jawbones. It's a big pair of muscles, and if you just do that, just relaxes them a little bit and helps your mouth work well. You can also do what we sometimes see horses doing, which is blowing your lips. So like that, warms up the mouth, warms up the lips, and indeed affects your soft palate as well. You can yawn. Not great in front of an audience, might be contagious, we don't want to see that. And relax in that sense can be really good. And then just maybe let your head drop very slowly, very slowly. Don't want to damage those little bones at the back, and then come back up again. Really helps. And indeed, another technique which I've come across and works quite well is just laughing silently. That can really help. I know these can look a bit ridiculous, but you're doing it off stage, you're doing it to relax yourself, to get yourself in the best possible position. Now, it's interesting, we're going to talk now about how we come across and how we communicate. And I'm sure you've had the experience that you've recorded yourself, you've heard yourself back maybe in the old days on an answer phone message or whatever, and you think, that's not me. But of course it is. It's how you are perceived by your audience. You can get, as well as recording on equipment like this, you can get a quick feedback for how you come across by using your hand as a sort of a baffle, a funnel, and it sends the sound back to your ear, and you get a bit more accurate feel for how you sound to your audience, because the way you perceive your voice is very different from how it comes out over the hard and soft palate, over your teeth, out of your lips, and out to your audience. So one specific exercise is now. One of the things I've noticed is that for an awful lot of lecturers, presenters, speaking a little bit more slowly, and also a little bit louder can really improve the impact that they have on people. So this is going to sound a little bit daft, but to increase the volume of what you say, and again doing this not in front of the audience, but it just warms up the inside of your mouth, is speaking with your tongue out for a short while. So I just want to illustrate the effect of this. So if I say today, hello, my name is Andy Catto, I'm Vice Chair of the City of London Guides. Now my tongue out. Hi there. My name is Andy Catto. I'm Vice Chair of the City of London Guides. Now, I hope you can hear a slight difference in the timbre, the volume of how I'm coming across. And I promise you I'm not putting that on. It is as a direct result of doing that exercise. So volume can be increased. You can also move the range that you're comfortable with. Most of the people I work with, they'll have quite a narrow range of things like the volume that they will use, the variation in pitch, emphasis, and speed, for example, a tone and the like that they use. What we sometimes need to do is just move that range a little bit, push the boundaries of it just a while. So you sometimes have to try practicing doing the extremes to feel what it's like just to move yours a little bit further. So what you can do is say the word ha, but try it very softly, ha, and then ha, and move between ha, 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 ha. Just try it to see what it feels like. I mean, probably you haven't shouted really loudly for a long time, or maybe with the current conditions put under a bit more stress, but you know what I mean. And I think practicing that ha, 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 and linking to that one when I was speaking quite quietly, we have to think about the articulation, the degree to which we use our mouth, we open it to get the fully formed the words out. And an exercise you can do to practice that, ideally with another person in the room, or you could do it in this sort of situation, having a FaceTime conversation with somebody, is to gradually move further and further away from somebody whilst having a whispered conversation, and see how far away you can get before the communication drops. So it needs to be a two-way communication, so the person who is on the receiving end then needs to respond to something you've said, and vice versa, and you gradually move further away. So I mean, if I was doing it here, I'd be starting and I talk like this. I am doing a presentation now on how to maximize the impact of your voice when you are doing presentation skills or lecturing to an audience. So I can't tell whether you were able to hear me towards the end there, but you get the idea. You have to really open your mouth, and exaggerating in this exercise, you wouldn't do that in front of an audience, but if you're getting used to it, it feels natural to open your mouth a bit more. That can be really powerful and really effective. Speed is another one I mentioned. If you hear a great presenter, great lecturer, they will often take a little bit of time to get their points across. Not so slow as to people are wondering if they've lost the thread or whatever, but it is more common in my experience that people tend to speak too quickly, often perhaps through nerves or wanting to get out of this situation as quickly as possible, so I speak very rapidly. You're trying to think of the next point to make that sort of thing. I find it's quite challenging to get somebody who speaks quickly to slow down. What can be done is to put in pauses. You see this a lot on television, say with interviews where somebody's being put under pressure by a John Humphreys type of character, and instead of coming straight in with a reply to a tough question, they look at say eye contact with that is an excellent question, John, or whoever, which I'm not going to answer, or whatever they say, but they've given themselves time to think. They come across as being in control, and you can do that while you are lecturing, and you can interject if you have a script, you have slides, whatever. I'm going to take a breath at that point and pause and breathe. And what can feel like a long time up here doesn't feel that bad to an audience. So think about that. You can practice that by reading a passage from a book, a play or something, and consciously putting in, I pause and say, in fact, to yourself, or indeed out loud initially, that phrase, I pause and I breathe. So that's a little bit about volume, it's about speed, it's about articulation. And one final exercise I'm going to ask you to do is around adding what I call colour. It's adding meaning to your language, variety to it, by changing things like the emphasis, the pitch, the tone, and by combining those in different fashions, giving over a very different impact on your audience. So an exercise, if you'd like to try it, is to say some sort of anodyne simple phrase. So the one I'm going to choose is Mary had a little lamb. It's a simple phrase we all know from the nursery rhyme, but I'm planning to imbue it with meaning. So you have in your mind, or you have written down in front of you, a series of adverbs describing something harshly, sexily, happily, sadly, whatever it might be, and then see if you can communicate that meaning in the way you say that simple phrase. So the words are taken out of the equation completely. They're just a means to an end. So for example, if I was to say, Mary had a little lamb, I think it would come across as I'm really happy and delighted. Mary had a little lamb. Again, body language is starting to come in, but particularly it's talking about the way I say things. Mary had a little lamb. Sort of sarcasm with that falling cadence, a falling pitch at the end. Mary had a little lamb. Sort of a David Niven or something, charming English with a style of thing. Mary had a little lamb. Quite harshly Ray Winstone maybe on that side of things. So you could play with that and try to do it with somebody over the phone again, or a partner in the room, and say what meaning is coming across. So anyway, I hope this has been of some interest to you. Do keep practicing those things. If you want to contact me, you can find me via the City Guides website. So the name is Andy Catto, and look forward to seeing you again when we will talk about body language and how to maximize the impact we make. Thanks very much for listening.